Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Ute Dash. I am one of your hosts today, Sammy Mora, and today I'm joined by, as always, Cole Bagley. But today we have a special guest, Steve Bartle of Ute Zone. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
We're great. Utah won yesterday. How was Boulder?
Man, it was cool. That was my first time there. It was kind of hectic getting there a little bit, but like I flew in, got there at like 8 a.m. and booked it over to Boulder. It took a while to get a rental car, which was kind of frustrating, but man, it was nice. I've never been there. It was a nice setting. It was pretty cool.
Cole, how are you doing today, Cole?
Oh, I'm doing so good. I had a couple of tweets that I sent out early before the season started, but they aged well as Utah kept the Rumble on the Rockies victory in Salt Lake City. So I'm feeling good.
So today we have a great show for you guys lined up. We're gonna do just a recruiting special. Signing day's on Wednesday. So let's just jump into it. So Steve, do you want to give us a lowdown? What's going on with this class? Should fans expect any surprises Wednesday?
Oh man, like that's it's a loaded question there, Sammy. But no, I think for the most part, this year has been kind of interesting with just the pandemic and kind of the restrictions that the coaching staffs have had to work through. Something that Utah is really known for is player evaluation, and a lot of that comes from being able to get out and see these players in person. And so Utah coaches weren't able to do that. And, it's I wouldn't say it's made things more difficult because everybody's in the same boat, but it's definitely been a challenge that the staff has had to overcome. And so, for the most part, they knew who they wanted. They knew the guys that that they felt good about, that they had a good evaluation on, and they've got them committed. So, they're working hard behind the scenes, and that's kind of been the theme of this class is just it's kind of been a lot of smoke and mirrors and a lot of um, just a lot of fun to kind of cover it because it hasn't been as out in the open in terms of our coverage of recruiting. Uh, with guys taking visits and being able to talk about that and publicize that. So it's been kind of interesting from that point of view. But in terms of the class, like it's a great class. They've got 16 commits, and it's ranked, I think, 30th right now, 31st. It fluctuates in between 29 and 31, and that's pretty remarkable. I can't remember the last time that Utah was, let alone ranked this high, but ranked this high with this number of commitments. So that speaks to the talent level that Utah is bringing in, and they've done just a fantastic job of piecing this class together. And they've done a fantastic job. And come Wednesday, the expectation is that they'll be able to finalize the class and get these guys to put ink to paper and sign their letters of intent and make it final. So a lot of hard work coming to fruition this week, and the staff's Utah fans, everybody should be pretty excited about it for Utah football.
Yeah, exactly. Like that 16, I know that there's been this was going to be a smaller class for Utah this year, but I feel like the 16 it's a pretty good number we have right now. And then there's a lot of really big playmakers in that class already that Utah was able to land. Carson Young in the chat said, any surprises, any last minute kind of guys that are going to commit to Utah on Wednesday?
Yeah, you know what? Like if we talk about surprises, then it doesn't make it really a surprise. But Utah's continuing to recruit a handful of players, and one player to keep an eye on. He's going to announce his commitment tomorrow. It's Cameron Bonner. He's a wide receiver out of Texas, St. Thomas High School, which is in like the Houston area, and so he's down to. He's got Utah, Baylor, Houston, Illinois, and I think Texas A&M involved with him. And so that'll be one to pay attention to is Cameron Bonner. And then there are a couple others that Utah will want to pay attention to, and they may not make a decision this week, but they'll definitely be players to keep an eye on as we move forward, whether it be this week or into the February signing day. And it starts with Joseph Manjack, who's another wide receiver out of the state of Texas. If you follow recruiting and you love recruiting and you follow the team last year, you'll remember Connor O'Toole, who joined the program. Unfortunately, O'Toole suffered a season-ending injury, so we weren't able to see him in action this year. But Manjack is a very similar athlete, similar style of receiver, a big guy at 6'3", 200 pounds, and just a really good athlete. And so he's probably the top priority for Utah, and it's down to Utah and USC for him. And so that'll be an interesting battle to monitor. But in terms of surprises, there are, I'll say this: there are a couple guys that have popped up over the last week or so that I'm very interested to see if anything comes of it. They haven't received offers just yet, but these are guys that Utah's been monitoring over the last couple of weeks, and it seems like there's growing interest. We'll see if it actually comes to a head this week. But yeah, they're definitely involved with some players that haven't been talked about as much, if you'd like to follow recruiting. So there could be some surprises, but I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't a surprise. So it should be it'll be an interesting one to see. And the thing here is, as much as we want to see commitments, in terms of roster management, those spots are very, very valuable, particularly this season, just because of the timing of when the season ends and signing day. These guys don't know who's going to leave just yet, who's going to transfer, who's going to declare for the NFL draft just yet. And so you want to make sure you have some spots available in case you need to address a position down the road. So, it's important that Utah maintains some flexibility and some space to address potential needs. So if we don't see a commitment, an additional commitment or two this week, it's not the end of the world. We still have the February signing day, and Utah's involved with a number of recruits. Will eventually make their decision between.
So my last question
February.
before we hop over to our next topic is, how many of these 16 guys do we expect to sign on Wednesday? Because I know in years past sometimes we've had a few guys sign, but last year, a majority of our class signed in December. So is it going to be the same thing this year, or is it going to be more February heavy this time?
Yeah, since the early signing period was put in place, I think that was the 2018 class. So this will be the fourth class that has had an early signing period. Utah has increased the number of players, or at least the percentage of their class, to sign in the early signing period. And so I think what we'll see is we'll probably see most, if not all, of the class sign on Wednesday. I think the only player that I could see maybe not signing is Viliami Pua, and that's just because he's got mission plans, and so we may not see him sign. He'll probably sign something like some sort of financial aid agreement, but it may not be anything. So I would expect to see everybody sign come Wednesday through Friday. I would be surprised if they don't get everybody signed this week.
For sure. So we're going to move on to our second topic for the day, which is, who is the biggest steal in this class? We haven't heard from Cole. So Cole, do you want to jump in first with who you think the biggest steal is?
Yeah, I love Ethan Calvert, linebacker, out of California, 6'3", 225 pounds of just pure strength and speed. He punishes ball carriers, makes a lot of solo tackles, and I love his ability to read the offensive play call. Watching a lot of his film, he's able to clog those holes, and he puts himself in a position to make a lot of big plays. And I think he's joining a defensive scheme that's perfect for his development, and he's going to become elite. The next one that I really like is Isaac Vaha. Also gets me just really excited because he is a 6'7" Goliath who can go up and get any ball you throw at him. He's a tight end. Great hands for a big man. Absolutely runs people over. And Sammy, if anybody's going to replace Keithy, I'm glad it's going to be him. And we know as well, Coach Witt likes to take players and change their roles and positions if he feels that they might be better somewhere else. So this is a big kid with a lot of potential on both sides of the ball if Witt feels the need to throw him somewhere else.
Yeah, for sure. I love Calvert and I love Vaha too, but I really love Ricky Parks. I'm a sucker for a good running back. I love a running back. I see Steve's nodding over there, but I am so excited for Ricky. Like, I've been seeing some of his, like, the numbers he's put up in his high school season this year. I'm so excited to get him up here on campus. Like, that's great. So Steve, who do you think's the biggest steal?
Man, the biggest steal. I mean, I love the guys that you've already mentioned. Obviously, Calvert. And in terms of steal, like, to steal him away from USC, UCLA, and Washington, where there are clear family connections, and obviously there's a connection with Utah. His dad played at Utah back in the day. But to steal him out of Southern California, if that's the way that you want to go by the term steal, yeah, that's probably the biggest steal of the class. But honestly, I love two guys in particular. I look at Trey Reynolds and Veltre Jefferson as two steals. I love Trey Reynolds' game. I love the way that he competes. Love the way that he plays. He's an intense player. He's a competitor. He's going to give you everything he's got in every single play. He's going to come in early, and I think he's a guy where he may not have the ceiling of an Ethan Calvert, but he's going to come in with a very similar floor, and he can potentially earn a spot and contribute early on in his career. Just a load of a linebacker. He's prototypical MAC backer where he can get downhill, he can go sideline to sideline. I love his game. And then Veltre Jefferson is a very, very unique. He's got an older brother that played at USC as a wide receiver. He played wide receiver growing up. Big guy, 6'4", 230 pounds. He could, if you want to talk about a guy that could potentially move around, that's Veltre Jefferson. He's coming in as kind of that outside linebacker, defensive end, similarly to like a Nate Orchard and Trevor Riley and that kind of player. And he could very easily move over to the offense side of the ball and play tight end. Like, he committed to USC as a sophomore as a wide receiver, which kind of speaks to his talent level. But he's coming to Utah on the defense side of the ball, and I'm really, really interested to see what he can do, at Utah with the player development, the track record that they have, and just exactly where he ends up on the roster. It'll be fun to see that. But those are the two guys I like. I love Ricky Parks. Love the way he plays the game. Obviously, you love Ethan Calvert. He's going to come in. He's an instant impact type guy. And, really love a lot of these guys in this class. Utah did a great job for sure.
Steve, is there a dark horse on this list? Somebody that really isn't turning a lot of heads, but you think has a lot of potential, especially to come in and to fit right into Witt's scheme and to run with it?
Yeah, no, I mentioned this, at Ute Zone just the other day. Koli Fa'aiu is an offensive lineman coming from Washington. I said he's probably the most underappreciated commit in the class this cycle, and very similar to John Pennicini in that 2017 class, where you had guys like Jalen Johnson and Marquise Blair and Corian Ballard who, had all the headlines. But John Pennicini, he came in and he was super effective at Utah because he fit the program's culture, their identity, and what they do on the defense side of the ball so well, that he was an all Pac-12 defender. He was a draft pick. And it's just because of, he was that dark horse type where he just fit the program so well. And I look at Koli Fa'aiu as that kind of player as well. Just a big dude at 6'4". He's already 310 pounds. And this kid is just a workout monster. He's a machine in the weight room. He's posted a bunch of videos of his workouts, and they're intense. Like, he's moving weight, and it translates onto the field. That's always kind of not a concern, but you always want to see guys that are strong in the weight room be strong on the field, and you see that with Koli. And good athlete. He's not a stiff. He's not just a big plotter, but he's a good athlete. He can move, he can pull, he's flexible, and really, really like his fit with this downhill running game that Utah is utilizing under Andy Ludwig. And I think he's an ideal fit for that type of offense, and think that, when we look back on this class 3-4 years from now, that we'll be looking at Koli the same way that we look at John Pennicini in that 2017 class. So, I love it. I think so. I think Koli is probably the biggest dark horse in this class.
I have a quick question. So we're seeing a lot of these, we have Koli's from Washington, and then Cole Bishop's from Georgia, and those are areas that we're usually not known for getting kids out of. Is that different approach to the recruiting? Is that Ludwigs Impact? What is it that's letting us get these kids in these states that we haven't gotten to before?
No, I mean, the biggest thing is that this comes from Utah's success over the last 2 seasons, that they've been on the national scene more, that it's exposed players from across the country more to Utah football. And yeah, going into Georgia, it's very rare that Utah goes into Georgia and pulls a player from the state. They have in the past, but it's not something that they traditionally do. They typically pull 2-3 kids from the state of Washington every couple of years. And so, but again, that's not an area that they traditionally recruit from, like it is a California and Texas. But when you have success at the level that Utah has over the last 2 years, and you remain competitive, obviously this year has just been kind of crazy, and I think everybody understands that. But when you have 2 back-to-back seasons where you're in the Pac-12 championship game, you're in the playoff conversation late in the season, and have a legitimate shot at the playoff, kids are going to notice, and kids from areas that you typically don't recruit are going to notice, and that's going to allow you to you can earn more across the country if you elect to do that. Obviously, you want to maintain your primary recruiting routes, but if a kid from Georgia is showing you a lot of interest, and he's equally as good in your evaluations as kids in Texas and California and Utah, why not? Why not go for him? And so this is all just part of being a bigger brand, being on a higher tier of the Pac-12, and having success as a program. This is kind of the result on the recruiting trail. This is just Utah being more successful as a program.
For sure. I totally think that's what it is too, because when you're in the talks for the playoffs, see it. It's it doesn't matter that you're playing your games at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. People are still going to take notice of that. Which actually that leads into our third topic for our third and final topic of the night perfectly. What is so appealing to recruits to come to Utah? Cole, do you want to jump in first?
Yeah, no, I'm going to jump in first because I'm sure Steve knows a lot more about it than I do. But yeah, Steve, he started to touch on it. Utah's starting to build their brand, I think, back-to-back Pac-12 championship appearances, South champions. They're also producing a lot of NFL talent, but I think there's a lot more beneath the surface. I think it has a lot to do with culture, the coaching staff, and then development. First of all, I think this is a family environment. When you join the U, you're not just another football player or a guy in a helmet. You're an individual that matters to the group, to its coaching staff, to its leaders. I've spoken, to several current and former players at Utah who absolutely love their teammates and the coaches. So I think it's a great place to play. From there, I think the development is absolutely incredible. In my opinion, the U is able to bring in kids who, when they first step onto the field, are just maybe average or don't have a shot at going pro. kids like, the Barton brothers, Chase Hansen, a little bit with Zach Moss, maybe Julian Blackman, and many others who are good but not great yet. And then the coaching staff makes them elite, and they end up taking reps wearing an NFL jersey. I think Cody Barton might be one of the best examples. I know when he first started at the U was struggling a bit. It was a little bit of a risk of losing his spot, but he changed his attitude, worked with the coaches, and now he's an elite linebacker for the Seahawks. And finally, I just think the coaches do a fantastic job mentoring these kids on and off the field. I did an interview with Jackson Barton earlier this year. He won a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he told me that the coaches are constantly stressing the importance of schoolwork in addition to football while they're at the U. And these coaches also create relationships with their players. Barton told me a lot of his former coaches have reached out to him several times since he left the program. And I think that, players hear about that. They see, okay, I'm not just going to come here and be a number. I'm going to come and be an individual. And these coaches want me to be the best person on and off the field.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I think Utah does so good at like developing that NFL level of talent. Like if you're putting countless guys from your defensive side of the ball into the NFL, kids are going to notice that. And if you play on the defensive side of the ball, you're going to want to be a part of that, because then Utah has a brand of being that hard-nosed defense. And there's playmakers on Sunday. I was watching Blackman before I jumped on here on the Colts game. He looked good. Like he did get beat on a couple of plays, which we'll ignore that for a little bit. But he looks good. Jalen Johnson looks good. These are rookies who are making impacts that played at Utah. So I think it's the culture that this team has. It's Utah family, Utah football family. It's like not just a number. You are a person, and they're this big group. Steve, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, Steve, tell us. What do you got?
Sorry, I should have just chimed in there. No, I think you guys covered it, and I think it starts with Utah's culture first and foremost. Is these coaches really do sincerely care about you as a player and as a person, and that's something that I've I hear very frequently as I talk to recruits is that the coaching staff, they're very honest, they're very truthful, and that's not something that you get as a recruit from most coaches. Most coaches are going to kind of tell you what you want to hear. They're going to sell you on the program and not just give you the facts. And so I think Utah has kind of found their niche, their groove as recruiters, and that they don't make it. They don't sell. There's not a lot of selling. It's just giving the facts, being truthful. It's being upfront. It's being, and it's caring about these kids more so than trying to add their talent to the program. It's really trying to build a relationship with these kids. And so that's something that is always going to be the top priority for Utah and why they have success on the recruiting trail. But I think the biggest difference in kind of their rise on the recruiting trail and their improved recruiting efforts, it's been their success with the NFL draft. It's been the number of players that they've put into the NFL. It's just that growing track record of player development that has fueled Utah's success over the last 2 cycles, where you've got a guy like Clark Phillips that is willing to come to Utah over Ohio State because Sharif Shaw just continues to develop cornerbacks at an incredible level. And now in this class, you bring in an Ethan Calvert who, he recognizes what Utah has done on the defense side of the ball, their track record of player development, seeing a Cody Barton in the NFL, knowing where he was as a recruit, seeing Devin Lloyd now have the success and knowing where he was as a recruit. And so, these higher rated players are taking notice of Utah's ability to develop talent. And that's going to go a long way for a lot of these highly touted, highly rated recruits. So, those are probably the 2 biggest factors in Utah's success on the recruiting trail. Obviously, there are other factors that go into it, particularly, at certain positions like running back. Utah's done really well over the last couple of years recruiting running backs, and they'll continue to do well moving forward. Utah's track record on defense. And so, a lot of different factors, but the two primary ones are, as you guys mentioned, the culture and then just their ability to develop talent and in particular, getting those guys to the NFL.
Steve, I just have a question sort of on topic here. If you can kind of briefly help us understand what is it about the University of Utah and their coaching that helps to develop these 3- and 4-star guys into elite NFL talent? What do they do differently, or what do they do really well?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I wish I could answer it in detail. I would love to know exactly what they do, but what this coaching staff does a great job of is preparing players for the type of work that is required and demanded of players at the professional level. So, if you follow Julian Blackman and Jalen Johnson, they credit a lot of their success to, what Sharif Shaw taught them in film sessions and how to study and how to, evaluate film to gain an advantage. And it's little things like that. It's going through the grind each and every day and working hard and not just relying on your natural talent. You've got to put in the work. And that's something that, Coach Whittingham, we always hear the phrase, trust the process and that kind of thing. And that's really what it is. It's like every little thing, every day, every practice session, every film session, that's all part of the process. And so it really comes down to that. But Utah's coaching staff just does a great job of instilling a work ethic and attention to detail more so than everything else. You've got to play at a high level, and in order to do that, you got to do it. Obviously, you have to have the physical and athletic ability, but you have to have the mental IQ and football IQ to really perform at a high level. And I think that's kind of what has separated Utah over the last couple of years is they've developed players from, obviously physically and technically, but it's the mental side of the game where, Utah has really kind of buttered their bread here in this regard.
So I have one final question before we have to sadly depart for the night. But how important is it that this coaching staff has had so much consistency? You haven't had a lot of coaches leaving and stuff like that, because you see, like today, Gus Malzahn was fired. You see these coaches who are being fired, and then it's a trickle-down effect. You start losing commitments and stuff. How important has it been for this Utah coaching staff that they have remained intact with a few minor changes here and there?
Yeah. No, it's huge, for Utah because, to be frank, like Utah isn't a recruiting destination. It's not LA, it's not Texas, it's not, Washington where you've got Seattle there. It's not a hotbed of recruiting talent. The talent has gotten better in Utah considerably over the last decade, but it's not, let's not kid ourselves. It's not Texas, it's not Southern California, So what's the word? That consistency, the continuity, and having Coach Whittingham. He signed that 4-year extension earlier this season. That's huge for these kids because they're being recruited by other coaching staffs that they don't have that, and kids are starting to get smarter. Recruits in particular are starting to get smarter with what to actually value their decision on. And a big part of it, and you're hearing it more and more, is that kids want to play for coaches that are going to be there for their entire career. You want that relationship with your recruiter, and you want to be coached by the guy that's recruiting you. And so to have that, Utah's had guys in place here at Utah for many, many years now, and there's just a lot of continuity on the staff, and that's huge for Utah. That's a huge advantage for Utah, and kids have definitely taken notice of it for sure.
So sadly, that's all the time we have for today on Ute Dash. We want to thank Steve again so much for coming on. We really,
So much
really,
wisdom.
really,
So
yeah,
much wisdom,
just-
Steve.
I could talk recruiting for hours. I could
just talk to Steve for hours.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
That's also fair. But Steve, is there anything you want to plug before we send out? We
sign off.
Man.
Say bye. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Check us out, utezone.com. Make sure you, especially this week with the early signing period opening up on Wednesday, that'll go Wednesday through Friday. We'll have you guys covered. So check us out, utezone.com. If you're not a VIP member, you can try us out, 7-day free trial. Check us out. Sammy, appreciate you having me on. And Cole, right? It's Cole.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry, man.
No, it's all good.
I'm operating on 4 hours of sleep. Yesterday was a heck of a day, so I appreciate it.
Double header day is so fun.
It was a long day, so I'm still in recovery mode.
No problem.
But no, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's always fun to talk and talk Utah football in particular. But I appreciate you guys having me on for sure.
Yeah, so before we sign off, we just want to remind you guys we are writing columns now through Sports Pack 12. You can check them out on their website, Sports Pack 12. Also follow them on Twitter at Sports Pack 12. I have a couple up there. They're pretty good, not going to lie, just as humble brags. While you're on your computer, also be sure to follow us on Twitter at Dash Sports TV. Also on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And then check out our website, dashsports.tv.com. Steve, we do this thing when we leave. We always give the fans a go Utes and flash the U. So, as always, guys, go Utes!
Go Utes, guys.